Hey guys, we're working on this 2014 Lexus. This is a RX350. And we're going to be changing out this rear wheel bearing today. It's making some bad noises. So first thing you got to do is get it jacked up and take the wheel off. You're going to find that you have 5 21mm wheel bolts. Once you get the wheel off, we're going to take the axle nut off. That's the next step. Now these axle nuts are staked. So you can see right here, normally they get punched in, and it just keeps the nut from ever backing off in case it were to ever come loose. So what you'll want to do is just take a punch like this. This is just a center punch. Stick it in there like that, and you just give it a whack with the hammer, and it will take that punch section, raise it back out. We do that just so it doesn't damage the threads too badly on the axle. So you can see all this rust on here. Up to you if you want to use a wire brush or something to clean the threads. Probably a good idea. We're just going to send it on this. So in order to take this axle nut off, you'll notice it looks different than a regular nut. And that's because it is a 12-point 30mm nut. So we're just going to put our impact gun on there. We're going to try this electric impact gun today. These are on there pretty hefty, so we're going to see if this gun will do that. I was surprised that just took that off, but okay. So now, just watch, this thing's probably gonna be very hot. Yes, it is warm. Next thing we wanna do is we're gonna take the brakes off and take the disc off. That's gonna give us a better view of the bearing, but the bearing's gonna come out this way. So let's get these brakes off. To take the caliper off, we've got 2 14mm bolts located here, and the other one is down here. And then we just take those off. All right, we can just flip-flop that up there for now. Now we need to take this bracket off. So we've got 2 17mm anchor bolts that are going to be located back there. All right, we're just gonna break these free with the ratchet, and then we're gonna see if we can sneak in there with the gun. One. Okay, threaded bolts too. All right, we got a couple threaded bolts in here, or bolt holes, sorry. So you could stick bolts in there. It'll drive the rotor off of the hub. I'm just gonna give it a couple hits with the hammer to see if I can free it up. Another thing we got to do is take this little plug out, and then I'm going to use a flathead screwdriver, and we're going to wind the parking brake shoes back in. So right now they're pretty close to being engaged, and by turning a little star adjuster inside, it's going to bring the shoes back in so that we can get the rotor off, because there's usually a little rust lip that forms in there. So I guess we might as well do that now. You just get in there, pull that plug out, and then we've got to find the star adjuster. So the star adjuster is going to be located right exactly at this point, which is about 5 o'clock. And then I think we wind it. If the adjuster sits like this, we're trying to go down this way. And you pretty much just do that until you can't turn the adjuster anymore. You can hear it. Yep, that was the correct way. Okay, now I'm going to go grab some bolts. I don't want to beat on this rotor too much because we're going to reuse it. So I'll go get some bolts. We can thread them in there, and you'll see it push it right off the hub. Okay, so I grabbed a random bolt. The thread is an M8 by 1.25. You can see how that just fixes all your issues, except now we still have to deal with, even though the shoes are backed off all the way, there's still a big rust ridge that's formed on the inside there, and it's grabbing the back of the emergency brake shoes or parking brake shoes, whatever you want to call them. So we just have to just keep beating this thing basically with the hammer a little bit and try to shock it off. Okay, there we go. So you can see parking brakes never get used. Here's that rust lip I was talking about. So that grows over time. And then it just grabs a hold of the back of the shoes. So it doesn't matter if you get the shoes backed all the way off, it's still gonna bite. But in this case, if you didn't back the shoes all the way off, you're definitely gonna rip these linings off, or you're gonna take the shoes and pull them, and then it pulls the anchor springs out of the back. And then it just becomes a whole mess if you're trying to keep the parking brake shoes. So now that we got that off, you can see our bolts back in there. We got 4 mounting bolts that are gonna hold this thing in. They're all 17 millimeter. The next thing I wanna do is just make sure that this axle shaft is free in the hub. So it's a spline shaft, and it should be able to float in and out just a little bit. And right now it seems to be kind of stuck. So I'm just gonna grab my air hammer and stick it in this hole at the end. And I'm just gonna hit it and see if I can get it to move a little bit, just so that it's somewhat free in there. So when we unbolt the bearing, we can just pull it right off. Otherwise, if it's seized in there, we're gonna be hung up and trying to pull the axle out. And the axle's not gonna wanna come out, so. All right, you see how that moved in a little bit? That's what we want. I just want to make sure that moves so that we can get this thing out. Now, if you don't have one of these at home, no big deal. Just get yourself your trusty center punch, stick it in the hole. You can use the hammer, or if you don't have a center punch, at least use a block of wood in front of that. Do not use a regular hammer and beat the end of this, or you'll mushroom this over and the threads will get all screwed and you'll never get the axle nut to start back on it. So don't smash that with a hammer. Okay, so what I'm gonna do first is I got a 1/2 inch 17 millimeter flex socket. The flex is gonna save us. And pretty decently long extension. I might actually go a little longer. Now these bolts are gonna be stuck in there pretty good. So that's why I'm going with 1/2 inch stuff. Now we basically just line this up so that we're pretty well started. I'm gonna tap this on here. We're fighting the rust right now, so. There. Now, we'll go ahead and grab our 1/2 inch ratchet. We're gonna break all these free. I just wanna break them free and then we can gun them out. Okay, broken free. Grab the gun. Stick the gun on there. There's one. Now we got to do the other 3. But basically, you're just going to be using different length extensions, and the swivel socket is just going to be your savior. All right, we only got one more to go. We'll give that a go. Okay, that is bolt number 4. So now we need to remove the wheel bearing from the knuckle. All right, so we're just gonna try to hit it with the hammer here. Now, this kind of sucks because you can't swing from behind because all your parking brake shoes and everything are in the way. There is a tool you can buy that has a bolt pattern on it, and you put it on and put wheel nuts on, and it's just a bar that sticks out, and you sledgehammer the end of the bar, and it just breaks the wheel bearing free kind of that way. So I don't know if you want to buy one of them, but I'm just gonna keep hitting this with a hammer basically and see if we can get it to come. It's This is gonna take the whole backing plate off with it. And then we're gonna have to separate. All right, wow. I can't believe it. Look at that. That is amazing that that just came out of there. All right, so now we just need to get all that dirty rust out of there and get that all cleaned up nice. Just pay attention to this. Look where this sensor is. See that little plastic sensor that sticks out of there? So you're just gonna wanna be careful. You might wanna take it out beforehand. So what I was saying was your speed sensor's right here. It's made of plastic, so don't break it. If you start pulling the bearing and the axle doesn't let go and it starts pulling the axle too, axle's just gonna wipe the end of that sensor right off, and then you're gonna have to put a sensor in it. Now, if you wanna take the sensor out, there's a 10mm bolt that goes in over here to hold the sensor in, and the sensor comes out if it's not rusted. This one was rusted, and we had to deal with something and try to take the sensor out 6 months ago. It was so rusted in there, it took about 2 hours to get the sensor out, but we did get it out without breaking it. So, not impossible, but usually they snap off. So now, like I say, continuing going forwards, we're gonna clean all this rust out. I'm just gonna blow this all out with an air gun, and then I'm gonna try to get in here and clean the surface all up nice so that when our new bearing goes in, everything fits properly. I'm gonna get rid of all this rusty grossness, and then we can start to put our bolts in and go the other way. All right, so we just pushed the axle out of the road a little bit so that we can get in here. I'm using a carbide bit on a little straight grinder, and it takes the rust off pretty good. Okay, so we've got everything ground out. You can see back to clean metal in there. The rust was quite severe, but we got that cleaned out. Just use the needle descaler to knock all the rust off of the inside of this backing plate so that that's smooth again. And then all we're gonna do is just give it a quick blow with the compressed air. And now we're pretty much ready to put the new bearing in. What I might do is just spray this with a little bit of fluid film or honey goo or something like that in order to protect the rust, or protect the metal so it does not rust. And let's get this wheel bearing in. All right, I got a little paintbrush I'm gonna get in there too. It's okay too if you lube up these splines. I just try not to get a lot of lube on these threads, that's all. Got our bearing here ready to go, and basically all we're just going to do is try to line this thing up so that it is sticking out true. And you can see the pattern here on the back of the bearing. We've got 2 close holes, and then these other 2 are a little further away. So we want the further away ones at the top. I don't know if this is gonna fit. Might just be in there crooked. What a pain in the ass. No. It's like got a chamfer on it, so it won't start. I can only start this way. You see how the threads don't start immediately. All right, hopefully this works. Just enough so that I can get this to go on the other way. Took I had an axle nut, a spare one in my toolbox, and I just ground the sides down on it so that I could, instead of the axle nut going on like this, we had to put it on backwards, because you see how it's chamfered here, it's cut, the threads don't start immediately. So the axle shaft wasn't 100% sticking through, and I wasn't able to get the nut started. I wanted to have the shaft come through just enough so I could get the nut started, so I could just use the nut to pull the axle shaft through the bearing. The splines are too tight. I don't know if it's just the machine tolerance. Here's the CarQuest number, or if they're painted or what. We did lube the shaft, so it shouldn't have been a problem. It should just slide in. It's gonna suck for the next guy that's gotta take this thing out. But now, I just flip this back around the other way, and we're going to keep on driving it home until it goes all the way through and bottoms out. We're almost there. Very close. Just start the bolts right now and then try to finish pulling it out. Just get this thing kind of mounted up so that it's not flip-flopping around in there. I might have to use the extension. Thank you. All right, we're going to hand torque all these fasteners now. They're 92 foot-pounds for the 4 wheel bearing mounting bolts. Okay, now we can do our axle nut. .217 is the torque spec for your axle nut. You need to stake the axle nut so you can see where this cutout is. You just want to basically line up a punch right to the edge of that, and you just crush that in so that if the axle nut were to ever come loose, it can't really spin off. All right, we're just spraying some of this on here to keep the rust from coming back. Don't get it on the threads. Okay guys, just make sure that this surface in here is clean. We don't have a bunch of dirt or rust on there. We want the disc to sit flush onto the flange of the hub. And then all you're gonna do is just line this up, throw it on. Oh yeah, what we want to do is clean this rust ridge. I totally forgot. So you can see all the rust that's in there. I'm gonna grind that down so that this goes on, because we had to fight to get it off, right? It was biting the shoes. So let's get that cleaned up good, and then everything should go on the way it's supposed to. All right, so we just used a little roll-lock cookie on an angle grinder, and it was 40 grit. But yeah, we just took that rust lip off there, and now this thing fits on minty. Doesn't matter where the hole is, the wheel bearing will accept the hole in any orientation on this one. And then all we got to do is just line that hole up. Remember where the adjuster star is? Located right here. Okay, now we want to adjust the adjuster star. If the wheel is like this, we're going this way. And we're gonna do that until the parking brake is set tight. And then we're gonna back it off a little bit. So just like that, our parking brake's fully engaged. Let's go back just a little bit, just like that, so that the parking brake shoes are very close to the disc, but not rubbing. That way, when you go to press the parking brake pedal down, the shoes don't have to travel very far before they engage. And basically it's right there. As soon as you press the pedal, parking brakes are engaged. If they're not set up close enough, your parking brake pedal is going to travel too far. And if they're set too close and they rub, you're going to induce a lot of heat into the disc, which could make the disc warp, giving you a brake pedal pulsation, or it could damage the wheel bearing as well. So very important to set that up properly. Take our new or our old plug, stick this back in here, and brake bracket on now. These are the 17mm anchor bolts, and they get torqued down to 58 foot-pounds. All right, next up is our brake caliper. So we get this on here, get these little 14mm bolts started, and they get torqued down to 28 foot-pounds. All right, so I'm just hitting this with a little bit of lube here so it doesn't get all rusty and corroded between the wheel. And don't get anything on the studs. Clean and dry for the studs. All right, we get our wheel on, get our wheel nuts started. Where is my... All right, now we just want to torque those down in a 5-star pattern with 2 passes at 100 foot-pounds. The torque spec really from Toyota is 76 foot-pounds, but I prefer to do 100. That's up to you.